This is the story of my life. Right after I posted a video talking about what was happening today, Coinbase filing its major motion to dismiss, they filed it like 10 minutes after I posted the video. And so even though I actually mostly wanted to talk about how things are going so crazy in the crypto space, and this is Bitcoin's total transfer volume, which is at the lowest point in 3 years, which keeps re-strengthening Plan B's idea of the stock to flow model and the concept that the bull market has already started, and right now we're just facing a pretty juicy dip, so to speak. I guess let us skip that and dive right into what exactly happened with the SEC and Coinbase and the lawsuit, etc. But guys, make sure you go ahead and press that like button. You've got hey, that's a nice thumb. You've got absolutely nothing to lose and a lot to gain, like, respect and internet points. Let's dive in. James Filan shared XRP community, bam. Coinbase has filed its memorandum in support of its motion for judgment on the pleadings. And to be more specific, today Coinbase filed a brief asking the court to dismiss the SEC's case against us. Our core argument is simple. We do not offer investment contracts, as that term has been construed by decades of Supreme Court and other binding precedent. By ignoring that precedent, the SEC has violated due process, abused its discretion, and abandoned its own earlier interpretations of the securities laws. By ignoring that precedent, the SEC has trampled the strict boundaries on its basic authority set by Congress. We appreciate the court's careful consideration. And even though I think it's interesting, just look at this juice for XDC. I'm sorry, guys, but it's up 192% this month. Damn, that's good. Anyway, the entire filing is about 38 pages. And again, over on the left, I'm not sure you guys can perfectly see it. You cannot. Yeah, you can, pretty much. The complaint does not plead securities transactions, which is number one. 2, the major questions doctrine compels rejection of the SEC's construction of investment contract. Point number 3, Coinbase is entitled to judgment on the claim that it acts as an unregistered broker through wallet. And number 4, Coinbase is entitled to judgment on the claim that its staking services constitute unregistered securities, which again have some subdivisions. Argument number 1 has a couple of subdivisions stating, because the complaint alleges no contractual undertaking beyond the point of sale, no investment contract is actually even being pleaded. So how can we talk about securities transactions when that's not the claim? Which again is subdivided. The SEC misreads Howey in asserting that a scheme without a contractual undertaking will suffice, which in theory, I can actually get behind on the SEC side here by saying, well, a scheme with no contractual undertaking, not officially a contract to the best of best points, could still be an investment contract, even though it's not an official contract. I mean, from the perspective of if everybody expects it to be a contract and it basically crosses all the check marks, even though it's not written on paper, you've got to. If the expectation was high, I still consider that to be the case. It's not relevant, but I just meant to put up that I don't fully agree with that wording. I do agree with their point that in this case here, Coinbase facilitates the idea that the purchaser and the seller don't know one another, so you're not really sure whatever you're buying, and it's extremely hard to conceptualize, just call it, that you are buying this with expectations of profit by the main promoter or the main party, when in theory you can't even know exactly who's selling it to you, so who exactly starts this investment contract with you. Recent crypto cases do not support the SEC's efforts to use scheme as an escape hatch from the statutory text. The SEC's effort to portray a simple asset sale as a security is an unprecedented stretch, which I think is also very much true. The idea, what the SEC is doing basically is saying, hey, cryptocurrencies themselves are transactions, that's BS. B, again, the second subdivision, transactions on Coinbase and through Prime brokerage are not investment contracts because the purchaser gets no share in business income, profits, or assets, as with the orange groves. The official idea of securities and whatnot were, hey, if I'm selling you an investment contract because I've got a land with orange groves and You basically buy a part in that, but I give you all the profits for all the work that I do with these orange groves. Well, that's an investment contract. But in this case here, if you buy something through Coinbase or Prime in this case, you get nothing except for having that asset. So it itself is not the security. An investment contract requires an expectation on the income, profits, or assets of the business. Because the SEC does not allege an expectation in the income, profits, or assets of any business, the Exchange Act claims cannot stand. And then under claim number 4, there's another subdivision. Coinbase is entitled to judgment on the claim that its staking service constitute unregistered securities. I didn't think they'd actually bring that up, but Coinbase's staking service do not involve an investment of money. Profits from Coinbase's staking service are not dint of managerial services. In that department regarding the staking, with regards to staking, they basically state that there's no risk from Coinbase's side. Again, I'm a little bit in the middle here about exactly their claims. They state Coinbase's service do not involve an investment of money. Coinbase's staking service are not an investment because on the facts alleged and incorporated by reference, they do not involve relinquishment of property, creating a risk of loss. Staking provides an opportunity for customers to earn tokens, yet for an instrument to be a security, the investor must risk loss. And I'd state that indeed staking does serve a risk. However, they state that Coinbase's staking services create no risk, meaning the difference here lies in the idea that potentially the staking itself can be risky, but Coinbase adds no risk to that, perhaps? Or they try to state that staking itself is not risky, which I think is odd. Maybe from the perspective that if the system works as it's supposed to, there is no risk. Because it isn't like a volatile game from the perspective of maybe tomorrow you wake up and all of a sudden the validation does not work anymore or your validator ran. Because the system they've created, that's nearly impossible. But in theory, and that's the way I always see it, there is a risk in staking because there might be a flaw that nobody knew yet, which is why a lot of people are not staking all their crypto. Even Vitalik Buterin, right, co-founder of Ethereum, he's not staking all his ETH because you don't know what you don't know. On that principle, though, I think Coinbase's assessment is right in the sense that through Coinbase with this staking, they'd, theoretically speaking, be more protected than if they were to go stake themselves on many different bases, as you're basically not going to be facing these errors with validators as often and things of that nature. And in case it would happen, I believe that Coinbase would pay for everything. And again, a lot of the risks that we talk about, cybersecurity attacks, loss of private keys, and smart contract failures, etc., well, they're not really at Coinbase's fault, right? They're unrelated to Coinbase's staking services themselves. Yeah, that's a point that I've actually not really thought of too much. And what they're stating is all crypto owners, whether their assets are staked on Coinbase or not, are subject to all these different points the SEC alleges. So what's the point in Coinbase not being allowed to? Because again, it's always there. And from that perspective, the idea is mostly not that there's no risk in staking, but it's that Coinbase adds no additional risk. And specifically staking through Coinbase serves no, maybe not, in the sense of a like an investment where you lend out money and you might get more money in return, or you lend out money and they perhaps will be able to pay you back, etc., like with a loan and things of that nature. But in this case here, no, you're interacting with the protocol as everybody could have done, but you're doing it through them, which is less risky than doing it the normal way. And there's no inherent risk of you not getting your money back because it's the network. And so if you didn't get your money back through them, you were not going to get it back anywhere else, I guess. What is an interesting point as well, and I did not actually know this, is apparently the Coinbase user agreement makes clear that users at all times control the digital assets held in their digital asset wallets. And staking in no way, shape, or form affects your digital assets in any type of way. I did not actually know that on Coinbase, if you're staking, that you still held your ownership. But perhaps they do staking through a interesting method. I got to take a step back. A lot of exchanges actually have a clause where the moment you deposit funds on there, it's theirs. It's not yours anymore. But perhaps with US-based exchanges, this clause does not exist, and you legally speaking have to own your own money. And so the moment that you stake, you're also staking your own money with your own, private keys, etc. The SEC must allege that Coinbase imposes something distinct from a user's experience staking on their own. It has failed to do so. The dooms its staking-based claims. That dooms its staking-based claims. This is something that if you asked me about a day ago, I wouldn't have known. But from reading it here, it really makes a lot of sense that the SEC can't actually properly go after their staking if their main objective should be that the Coinbase experience would be quote-unquote worse or distinct. Again, in my personal perspective, the only reasonable argument here being worse than if they were to do it on their own. But from as far as I read and as far as I understand, it would actually only be a better experience through Coinbase than on your own, except for the perspective that they might take a cut. But I guess I'm not even sure on that either. Profits from Coinbase's staking are not a dint on managerial services. They state here that no part of this Coinbase staking service in any event reflects profits generated by the essential managerial efforts of others, as it must to constitute an investment contract. And I'd say that's where things, again, get a little bit difficult because now we're talking about the essential part of staking and exactly what that means in the US's eyes. But that's a way more difficult story. They ended off here with a little jab, actually, that Coinbase has long supported and proactively sought additional regulation for digital assets industry. Nothing in its defense of the SEC's charges marks a deviation from that position. Coinbase welcomes new regulatory rules of that road and believes they would benefit Coinbase and the industry. But regulation must be fair and transparent and lawful. The SEC's attack on Coinbase is none of that. This action reflects an abrupt, unexplained change of agency positions. Unmoored from the statutory authority Congress has given the SEC, it proceeds in the form of a punitive, ad hoc enforcement action, notwithstanding Coinbase's repeated pleas for forward-looking notice and comment rulemaking. Most fundamentally, it does not comply with the securities laws. The SEC has overstepped its statutory authority, and the case should accordingly be dismissed. Again, a critical point of all this, because I've read it now fully, is that Coinbase is now assuming whatever the SEC says is basically true. And even then, they do not basically fulfill any proper categories. Again, you have to understand, most of the times, these motions to dismiss get denied, right? But it's a good idea for the public, at least, to see how you are putting yourself out there, and that, well, in this case here, the other party does not even have the authority to go after you, which, again, might also showcase to the judge that you just think it's completely misplaced. If you were to not file it, it would be a little bit weird. Yet again, it's not mostly not granted. Because, again, the bar for this motion to dismiss is really high. You got to look at all these claims, and even if they were to be true, what the SEC is asserting, even then, should it not make sense? And that's exactly what Coinbase is trying here. They're basically saying, hey, the SEC on all these points is basically failing to properly reason something, right? The SEC alleges something, well, this claim fails at the threshold for the same reasons stated above. And that they're doing with basically every single one of these facts. Also, the wording of even if is very important in here, as they just have to state that in any case, this should just be thrown out. It should not move any step further because it does not properly allege, because it does not say, because it does not yada, yada, yada. And again, as I said, that bar is very high. Coinbase is trying, and I think it's beautiful to read, with Ripple, by the way, being mentioned 17 times in this entire debacle. The Ripple court found no investment contract based on facts substantially identical to those alleged here. Yeah, you can see in the Ripple case, they talk about institutional sales, but that these other sales are basically not securities, which is why it's mentioned so ridiculously often and referenced so ridiculously many times, which is beautiful, because at the end of the day, that's pretty much what we wanted, right? The most important part for us all was to make sure that other cases would basically look at whatever the Ripple versus SEC judge said and base things upon that. And specifically what the judge ruled upon, they're also arguing, right, in the Ripple case, that there's no, like, the person buying, the person selling, they don't know each other. So you can't basically be looking for profit from the other party because you don't even know the other party. See Ripple's case. Investment contract where buyers could not have known if their payment of money went to an issuer or any other seller of the subject token. And the more I start looking into this, the more I keep on thinking, that's going to be the standard now, right? As of this point, the whole Ripple case for XRP, that's set the standard in the crypto industry with regards to exchanges, right? That's the reason all these exchanges relisted XRP, most of them at least, because as of this point, that's the law. Until another case comes out that basically says, no, cryptos are securities on exchanges. So if you were to sell XRP to your, okay, let's call it a different currency here. You were to sell Ether to your buddy. Now that's a security transaction then, because you're selling it to your buddy and they had expectations of profit somewhere in that field. I'm not sure how, but hey, that's for the judge to decide. As of that point, it might also become law, but this right now is the law. Oh, am I finding this beautiful? Oh, am I finding this beautiful? This is nice. This is very nice. Very, very nice. Anyway, I want to get this video out as soon as possible to you guys as the news just dropped and I hopefully am not too late. As I said before, make sure you put that notification bell on so you're notified whenever some news drops. I try to always be the first or at least close to the first. And let me know down below, do you think this is going to be approved by the judge? Because they make valid arguments, but I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not a legal advisor. I can't tell you what the percentage chance is this is going to go through. And at the end of the day, this is like so double, tripled up even. Because Coinbase first sued the SEC saying, hey, let's sit down and make rules. Then, what I said in my previous video, Gary Gensler now came out to say, hey, we'll talk about crypto regulation later. Let's now first talk about AI. But then in the Coinbase case, the judge already pointed out that it's strange for the SEC to grant Coinbase their IPO rights, but then on the opposite side also not willing to give an answer to want to just, or as to whether or not they want to sit down to talk about some crypto regulation. Like, things are in such a strange field that I'm thinking it's like an entire new chapter that's being opened up right now with the Coinbase case as it's moving forward quickly. Coinbase is putting that fire on it, making sure the responses are as quickly as humanly possible out there. And even though I, again, am not expecting this to be granted, as motions to dismiss almost never are, it seems, it's a good start as a foot in the door to say, hey, SEC, a big middle finger to you. And if it does get granted, that would be insane. Whoa, that would be insane if Coinbase now gets the motion to dismiss. You guys can't imagine how huge that would be for crypto in the US. That would literally put the SEC back in their chair. Or, no, I think that put Gary Gensler into a mental asylum. I think that would be one of the biggest jabs you could get to the face. Would I think it's funny? Absolutely. But I don't think it's going to happen. But it would be extremely funny, and I'm looking forward to any updates on the matter. And I'll keep you guys up to date through these videos, so make sure you put that notification on so you never miss out on an update. I'll see you guys again in another one, hopefully pretty soon.